Now it's a minute past. I know a few people more subscribe through the app, so they'll probably be joining, but I think I should just kick off, if that's okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna kick off with the presentation and we'll see if people join. If not, then it's gonna be a very cozy session. So, today we'll be talking about Headless and Composable, more inside of the world of Commerce Cloud than all of the other clouds. Now, you can have Composable Headless in any kind of setup, because Headless is more of a tool that you use as a means to your end. But there's a lot of different stories going around, and yeah, Headless has become, within the Commerce Cloud, part of the Salesforce world, a bit more into the picture the past few years, because Headless has existed for a very long time. The term, it's not something new. Did my first Headless, I think, in 2012, which is 10 years ago. But it's become the new buzzword around with brands in the retail. Because of the pandemic, a lot of companies wanted more flexibility. A lot of brands missed, they wanted to move fast, they wanted to replace systems, buy online, pick up in store, they needed it in 2 days or preferably yesterday compared to having to wait months to get a system up and running. So flexibility has become a real important thing in the lives of retailers and in commerce in general, and that's what we're gonna be talking about today. But before we get into, maybe I should do a short introduction of myself for the people who don't know me. I am the head of commerce at Forward. I started out as a developer, but in the past 2 years, also during the pandemic, I transferred from being the developer to a technical lead, architect, and then in a very quick move, head of commerce, where I'm looking at about 40 developers. Hello. 40 developers within my team, and I am mainly in charge of hiring, knowledge sharing within my team, getting all of... Oh, you okay? Transferring the knowledge I gained over the past decade around commerce and marketing towards my team. And that I've been using also outside of Forward, where I became an instructor at the Trailhead Academy, where I teach the architect course for the certification. I started a blog for many important use cases to make it easier to wade through all of the information that is available within the ecosystem. I joined Shirtforce, which is a new passion of mine, to get some designs and get them towards a good cause. And since last week, I got a new edition, the Life of Goldie. Which was given to me at Connections. But enough about me. Let's get into the information that you're here for. But before I get started, I want to talk a little bit about Commerce Cloud. There's a lot of misinformation that's going around on what Commerce Cloud actually is within the Salesforce ecosystem. If my clicker works. There's actually a lot of products that exist below the name that Salesforce gives Commerce Cloud. Now, starting from where I started my journey, that's B2C Commerce Cloud, which is an acquired product. It was acquired in 2016 by Salesforce, which is called Demandware. It's a completely different product from the CRM. There is no relationship. I'll go about what the difference and the same things are in the next slide. Then you have B2B Commerce Cloud, which was called Cloud Craze before. It was a classic implementation. And afterwards, Salesforce started developing their own B2B implementation on Lightning, which is now 2 years old, I think. Might be wrong. Not the specialist in B2B Commerce Cloud, but at least in Lightning, where a re-implementation had been done. Now, if we look at the last year and a half, a lot has happened again within the Commerce Cloud space. A few things have joined, which was the PWA Kit and Managed Runtime, which is also an acquisition, which was for the Headless storefront. So that's one of the things that we'll be talking about today quite often. Omnichannel inventory, which is a joint product between Commerce, OMS, and basically a separate product for inventory management. And lastly, we have order management, which was added under the Commerce wing of Salesforce. But what is, where does it start? This whole headless journey that Salesforce is taking with retail in mind, with B2C commerce. That's the PWA Kit, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about B2C Commerce Cloud first, to at least if I mention some terms and you have never done B2C Commerce Cloud before, there are some things that are relatable. So when I talk about cartridges, you can look at it as a package, an unmanaged package within the CRM, an installable, but more development needs to upload some code and it will start doing its thing. We have quota limits. On the CRM, you have governor limits that you need to think about. On the CRM, you have Apex, which behind the scenes is still Java. On B2C Commerce Cloud, we actually write JavaScript, which is translated to Java. So they all run on Java, but a different way that we as developers can talk to the engine behind it. And that's also why we have a Rhino character here that I had designed. So this is not an official character. I had this one designed. It's a joke towards the engine, the Rhino engine from Apache that is being used by Demandware to translate JavaScript to Java. So you don't need to restart the server, etc., like we have with Apex. You just upload it and it does its thing. But over the years, if you look at the past 2 years, it's becoming more and more integrated. New products have been added. If you look at order management, there's a connection connection in there out of the box, a support ticket away, and a few hours of mapping and making sure all of the data. Yeah, and documentation. There's a 60-page PDF. That's so to get you started. So it's getting more integrated. And CDP, there's also an integration there. So all of the new products are being productized to make sure that they talk a little bit better to each other than they have been doing over the past years. But if you want to learn more about how these things can be connected, I have another session at 4, connecting the clouds, wedding or funeral. Dramatic title, but if people here have done the connection, they might know why it is a funeral sometimes. So that's Commerce Cloud, bit of an introduction to get some of the misinformation that's around. But what is Headless and what is Composable is the next thing. So for the people, I already said Headless is not new. It's been around for a long time, maybe some different names that have been given. But it's being put more in the picture by Salesforce at the moment, because in commerce, a lot of brands wanted more flexibility, and that's why I thought I might do a presentation, get some brands involved. What is Headless and why should you use it? The most important question, why? But yeah, if we talk to people about Headless and you talk to person A and person B on the other side, you will get different answers from everyone about what Headless actually is, because there's a lot of different ways that you can do Headless. And then we come to a composable architecture. That's why I also put composable in the title. They go hand in hand together. A composable architecture and a Headless, it's a way of working. But Headless has been a very confusing term towards customers, because they get a different answer from a different partner or a different person every time, and they don't see anymore what it actually is and get confused more and more. But if we go to the basics, going Headless, it's basically separating your front end from your front end systems from your back end systems. Now, this is the most basic thing that Salesforce is providing now. I'm going to talk about a PWA Kit later on. Is that you have a separate front end, separate back end, and you have some APIs to get them to talk nice to each other. A standardized way that different systems can communicate, in most cases REST. If you're using SOAP, my condolences. But it works, but that's basically what it boils down to. If we go to the next slide, if my clicker works, doesn't. There we go. There's different ways that a headless architecture can work. If we start from the left, you can see that we have, if you look at B2B commerce, at B2C commerce, you have everything on one system. Your front end, your back end, it's one package, deploy it once, and you're done. Your front end is dependent on the back end for deployments, and if something in the back end is happening, the front end has to wait until the back end is done, so you can deploy them together. If we move to the right, you see that in the front end, we're removing one block as a separate service that we can then use possibly in other systems, or maybe the right block is a headless application running next to your website. But the website is still Experience Cloud or in SFRA if we're talking B2C Commerce Cloud terms. Here we only have one separation, but here it starts to get complicated. And then we're going into microservices world, where every facet of what your front end uses is a separate service. You have your commerce engine, you have your search engine, you have your CMS, loyalty. Can keep on going, probably create a lot of different blocks here, and all of them are separate systems that you possibly have to manage separately. So those are things you need to keep in mind. When you move more and more to the right, the architecture can become more and more complex because you have a lot of different systems that are responsible for something, but you also have different management tools usually to manage all of those different systems. Now there's no slide for this, but this can be separated as well. Now in this case we have a head that has multiple bodies, if we talk in headless terms, but you can also have a body with multiple heads. Now that's a Hydra, I think. In that case, like you can have one backend, you can have your mobile storefront, you can have your mobile application, you can have your smartwatch, you can have a smart speaker, all talking to the APIs of the backend. For example, if you want to ask Alexa, where's my order, or what's the status of my return, or do you have this product in stock, then that would talk to your backend system or systems, depending on how you set up your architecture. So it can go from easy to complicated pretty quickly, depending on how far you want to go in your architecture. And then we go into composable. Now, what do we mean with composable architecture? Now, usually headless is part of the composable architecture. And the idea with composable, or at least how it is sold publicly, is that it gives organizations and their IT department the flexibility to choose the systems that fit the best with their needs. Like you have best of breed CRM systems, you have best of breed search engines, you have best of, well, they call it always best of breed. Still need to make sure that you use them correctly. And they want to be able to switch them out, need the flexibility to say, okay, this is not working for us anymore. We want to switch out those systems. We want to compose our own optimal architecture. And that adds complexity. And that's something you need to watch out for, because if we go from the original everything in one system, there's one system you need to look at. You don't have to look at 2, 3, 4, or 5 different backends if something is wrong with your data or something's not showing right on the front end. That's something you need to take into consideration. Like you give IT the flexibility to choose the systems they feel is best to get the job done, but you still have the human factor of people using those systems correctly. And that's where complexity comes in. Like if we say we're going to switch out our loyalty engine with a small loyalty engine that's built in, you need people to manage that loyalty engine, watch what's going on, understand that system perfectly, be the ambassador of that system. And if you're not ready to take on that responsibility, or you do not have someone to do that, then it might work during the summer months, but if you hit days like Black Friday, where there's a lot of stuff going on, and that one person also has other tasks to do during those days, then they might actually be not optimally using that system. They get lost and they said, yeah, it worked during the summer, but I just can't find the time to manage this right now. And that's a responsibility. You need to have people using all of those systems within a composable architecture correctly, and make sure that they buy the best of breed and not drive it like a bike when they have a sports car in their portfolio. So that's something to really think about when going with this architecture. Like if you have a monolithic architecture, like they said, everything in one system, it's easier to manage. You have one system. If you take Salesforce, for example, you have one support portal to contact. Let's take an example. The site is slow. You have one party usually to talk to, Salesforce, saying, okay, my site is slow. We'll talk to the partner, our single point, and they will usually go to Salesforce if there's nothing wrong with the code to get some extra access. But if you have 5 systems behind that front end, one for loyalty, one for search, one for content, you have to check all of those 5 systems. Where's the bottleneck in my architecture? And those are really things that that you need to think about with that complexity. That you have the people available to do those investigations, and that you really know how the architecture works, so you know where to start your journey towards finding the solution towards the challenge that you're ahead. And if you do not have that picture in your head, or nobody knows exactly how all those systems work together, then you're gonna be in trouble. Because, okay, during the summer, lower sales, maybe then that it takes 2 hours to figure out, or a day to figure it out, might not be so hurtful. But during Black Friday, when sales are hitting your site, that 2 hours or that day, yeah, Black Friday is gone by the time you figure out where your bottleneck is. So that's where the responsibility really comes into play. Now, within Commerce Cloud, you can think of the composable architecture as not something that is online. When you go with composable, you usually want flexibility, but also reusability of your systems. Like, you buy your loyalty engine, yeah, you want to use that physically in your store as well. You don't want to just use that online. You want the customer 360, as they call it. If you have your loyalty card, you have a physical card that needs to be connected to the same thing you use online. So that's where you need to think about what systems you're going to use, and how they fit within the entire organization. Not just singular, the person from e-commerce or the IT saying, hey, for the website we need this. But really think, when you choose your systems, can we use them somewhere else? Because that's where the real power of the composability. You can have free systems for the online, reuse 2 of those also for your in-store kiosk or for your register. And that's where the headless power, as long as you have APIs, you can have those systems talk to each other, and usually you want to have them in the same manner talk with each other. And if it gets really complex, you can have an orchestration layer in between, Muley here, MuleSoft, to help you get a centralized point with all of those different systems, to at least make it a bit more flexible towards the future to switch out a system. Because with composable, and usually with composable, clients expect that they can switch out a system on demand without affecting any of the other components. If you do point-to-point, yeah, that's not going to work. So if you have an orchestration layer like MuleSoft in the middle, that doesn't change any of the messages that the front end is receiving, you can switch out the back-end systems more easily. But of course, you need to test. Every system is different. But an orchestration layer is really something that can help you when working with a composable architecture and headless. So let's look at what it means with Commerce Cloud. Now what's happening there, so this is exactly the same list as before, is you have a lot of different products, and the most important thing is the last 3 that's happening in the latest years. Now you have your separated storefront, the headless storefront, the PWA Kit, and the managed runtime. The omni-channel inventory, which is a microservice that only takes care of your inventory, nothing else. So, and that is reusable. You can use it in any system you want, but it's included in the license of Commerce Cloud. And then you also have order management, which will take away a lot of the capabilities. There was an order management built into Commerce Cloud B2C at one point, but it's been removed, luckily, and gone to a dedicated product. And you can have all of those systems talking to each other, let them do their thing, what they're best at, and make sure that you're using them the way you want to. But the journey for headless for Salesforce at the moment, at least on the Commerce Cloud side, for a headless storefront is the PWA Kit. So what is the PWA Kit? It is Mobify. It's an acquisition that happened a year and a half ago, about 2 years ago, which was already integrated with Commerce Cloud. It is a template, a website where you can start from, which already contains all of the features you need to have a storefront towards your clients, towards the customers. And it's everything, but the PDP, checkout, category pages, home pages. There are a few missing links still that are building, but there's an active team within Salesforce expanding, releasing new versions every month, adding new features. And this is what the future is towards headless, I believe, within the entire Salesforce Commerce Cloud ecosystem, not just B2C, but I'll touch upon that in a later slide, on what the plans might be with a completely separated tool like this, because this is completely separate. So there is no connection actually to the existing Commerce Cloud engines. It's a separate deployment location. There is a different interface. It's a different website. There's no connection at all towards the other products. So again, it's a retail React application. It's built in React, not in Lightning. It's a boring technology, as it's been called. React has existed for 10 years. I think it's 2013. So yeah, almost 10 years. Which there's a large community behind React to make sure that if you're building something and you hit a wall, it's just a Google away to find a solution in most cases. And it's used as a starting point. It is not a finished website. It is expected that an implementation partner builds it towards the brand and gives it a feel, the look and feel that the brand wants to express towards the clients. It is fully integrated with B2C Commerce Cloud at the moment. So like I said, it's a working site. You can order on it, but of course there's no backend processes behind it. So you still need to build those, integrate them with systems. And then there's a question, what about B2B and B2B2C? I think it's called B2B2C again. I know it was a different name like a month ago, but they went back to B2B2C. If someone knows, the naming within Salesforce has really got me confused the last month. It's B2I? Yeah, so the naming is still under discussion, I think. So we'll see where that's going. But then the biggest question when going with a headless storefront is, where are you going to host it? Because if you're going the headless route, usually if you look at the competitors with Salesforce Commerce Cloud, you have your commerce engine. And then you have your headless storefront talking to the commerce engine and other engines. You have to host it yourself. You have to set up your servers, application servers, your web servers, your load balancers, CDN. That's all of the stuff you usually have to set up yourself. And Salesforce saw, yeah, not every brand is ready to take on that responsibility or wants to take on that responsibility, because Salesforce has a lot of people. They know infrastructure. They know how to manage it. So let them do what they do best, and let the partners and the customers do what they do best and implement. Just focus on the code, deploy, and not think about all of the rest of the responsibility that comes with setting up a multinational front end. So they take care of the hosting, take care of the CDN, security. You get a deployment portal where you can see which version has been deployed, but it is a completely different thing than you will see on the CRM or even in B2C Commerce Cloud. It's a separate product, also an acquisition, Mobify, and it has been rebranded to the PWA Kit and manage Runtime. It's also to allow for developer efficiency. Like I said, you only have to focus on your code. You can also, again, develop locally, which is something that usually doesn't happen within Commerce Cloud. You have to deploy it to your sandbox. With the headless solution, you do not have to. You can actually run it locally, but you do need an internet connection because it's still talking to the sandbox or your production instance or whatever you connect it with. And I think they also put Cloudflare now in front of this. Before it was a different CDN system, but now it's Cloudflare, just as B2C Commerce Cloud has done. So again, just a repeat of what the managed runtime is. It allows you to upload multiple projects. So you're not limited to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just like with the sandbox, you can spawn as many as you want. I think the official limit is 100. That you can spawn within one project, and then you need to give Salesforce a call. Before it was 200, but I think they lowered it a little bit because, yeah, 100 is still enough per project to get your stuff done. During the holiday season, it auto-scales just like Salesforce does. In general, more load, it's going to auto-scale for you. It gives you the deployment infrastructure, and it takes care of all of the different edge services that you usually have to set up yourself, the CDN, the web application firewall from Cloudflare, processors, and API proxy service. Now, What I mean with the latest, the last item there, the API proxy service, is it makes all of the API calls, at least you can, if you want, make them first-party API calls. You're going to proxy all of your external API calls through the managed runtime and act like it's a local service that you're calling. This has to do with headers and preventing you from, what's it called again? Can't think of the name. The cross-site API calls, so that the browser usually blocks them if the correct header has not been set, and with the API proxy service you can circumvent that and make sure that all of them are available even if you have no control over the other side to allow list your domain. So that's the idea with that API proxy service, and also control caching and other things that you usually have no control over, to at least give you some more power to affect third parties with caching and security to your liking. I'm going to skip the demo for now. I'm going to see how much time we have at the end, how many questions there are. If you want to check, it's publicly available, what it looks like, so take a screenshot or remember, if you can remember the URL. It still has the Mobify storefront.com in the URL, but I will see where we get. Still, yes, we'll see where we get. But then the next question is, okay, this is for B2C Commerce Cloud. What about B2B? What about B2B2C? It's on the core, the CRM platform, force.com, whatever everyone prefers to call it. What are they? Are they also going to be using the PWA Kit? Now, I've heard conflicting messages, but in most cases they say, why not? It's a separate product. Sure, it talks to B2C Commerce Cloud right now, but why shouldn't it be able to provide a headless solution for a B2B site? I mean, they also want some flexibility and a bit more freedom than maybe Experience Cloud provides for them. Does it really matter what site they choose? It's the Salesforce platform is API first, if everything is available. So why not provide this as a solution as well for the B2B customers or the B2B2C customers to get a headless storefront that talks to multiple services? I mean, it has powerful APIs, there's no question about that, so it makes sense in a way that they should not just keep this to the B2C Commerce Cloud environment, but that, yeah, B2B also gets some love within the headless space with that acquisition. And we'll see where it ends. Like, forward-looking statement, I'm not working for Salesforce, so they'll be deciding when and where. Might be next year, might be in 2 years. We'll have to look at their roadmap and see which services they want to implement within the headless space. Because there's still a lot of features that they need to implement within B2C Commerce Cloud, like Page Designer and content. It's still not available, so you have to build it yourself. So they're still filling in those gaps within the PWA Kit. And I've had this question within the community a lot, like, yeah, are we going to remove B2C Commerce Cloud and yeah, am I going to have to learn React and throw away all of my knowledge that I have from the B2C Commerce Cloud, the JavaScript that I've been using for the past 5 to 10 years? Now, I myself have only 5 years, but I know a lot of people who've been into the B2C/demandware days a lot longer than I have. And some of them are really like, I don't like React. I don't want to be developing in React. So if you look at React, it's solid base. Like I said before, there's a large community behind React. There's training videos everywhere, YouTube, on Udemy, whatever platform you call, some private sites. There's a lot easy ways to learn React, but it's something you need to keep in mind. But do you have to? That's always the case. You have the split between back-end development and front-end developers. You have full-stack developers, you have back-end developers, front-end developers. Now for front-end developers, yeah, that's going to change. If you come into a PWA Kit, the front-end developers are going to have to do React. Back-end, however, Yeah, that's still going to remain pretty much the same. Your data modeling, your processes, your automations, all of that stuff is still going to remain either Flow or Apex if you're talking about B2B or B2B2C, or custom controllers, or maybe some mini things or jobs or automations. Those are still going to remain in the same language, because the PWA Kit is only your front end. It's not your back end. All of the business logic is still going to reside within those systems that you're used to. So a few people will have to learn React in a couple of years, depending on the roadmap from Salesforce and how quickly everyone adapts the PWA Kit. If you look at myself, we are pushing the PWA Kit towards all clients for future-proofness, and also because the development on SFRA, and Site Genesis, for the people who know that, the older template, that's completely halted. So at one point they are going to stop supporting, and third parties are not going to build plugins for those anymore. So when will it happen? Next year? In 2 years? It is going to happen. So you need to be prepared as a developer to make a change in how you see B2C Commerce Cloud, B2B, depending on the roadmap. Like I said, in the backend, there's a lot to do. You have your data modeling, your custom APIs, automation, reporting. That's not going to change. So with composability again, going to hit that. There we go. If we're going to look at the different products that you can compose together to get a 360 view or the customer 360 view, there's a lot of options within the Salesforce ecosystem. You have Commerce Cloud as your commerce engine. You have OCI, Omnichannel Inventory, as your microservice for inventory. You have your order management, which has APIs available for orders and management of that. Your order history in a My Account from your website. Your returns, your cancellations. You can have your front end integrated with the OMS. To do that. Service Cloud, you can look at your cases in your front end. You can write to be forgotten. All of those things can be done within the Salesforce ecosystem. You have Marketing Cloud, Loyalty Cloud, and so many. NFT Cloud probably is going to be in the e-commerce space as well. So there's a lot of composability or different systems that you can combine together to answer the use cases and the questions that a client might have on what they need to get things done, or at least give the customer the experience that they want and the functionalities that they want from their brand. But you don't have to stay within the Salesforce ecosystem. There's no reason to. There's a lot of third-party services available. If you look at search engines or loyalty, your service, there's other things available. You don't have to go outside of the Salesforce ecosystem, but for some clients it makes sense if they have some different requirements that are not met by the products at Salesforce, or maybe the Salesforce product is just too big for what they need. I mean, the question you always need to ask is when you're choosing systems is, what do you want to use them for? Are you going to use all of the features that that service provides? Like it can have, if you look at Loyalty Cloud, you can do so many things. It's a big product, but if you're only going to use like a small piece of it, does it even make sense to make the investment to get a full-scale loyalty? If you look at drop shipping, which is also something that's coming up with a lot of retailers to expand their own inventory with other products that they do not provide themselves, or they want to provide their products on other marketplaces. Do you need a full-scale Miracle implementation which provides all of the different services you need, but if you're starting with 1 or 2 connections, do you need a big full outblown system with all of the APIs and customer service built in? Do you really need that? So that when looking at your architecture, that's a very important question that you need to ask yourself as an architect, and also the client, like, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to make use of all of those different features that they provide? Come on, clicky. Yeah, there we go. Now, like I said, outside of Salesforce, the choices become endless. Like, you have so many products with Salesforce, but outside of Salesforce, there's also a gazillion products that you can choose from, all with their specifics, what they say is best of breed, what they say they do better than System X. So yeah, it's a big world out there, and all of them have good features, but when looking at composable and integration, you need to ask a question as well, do they provide good APIs? Because you can see that they provide good services, but can we actually use all of them? From an IT perspective, do they provide the APIs for the features that we need? So that's something you really need to look at. And the same with scalability. If we talk about days like Black Friday, they really need to be able to handle the load of those systems. If you still have systems that are on-premise and you're connecting with them, but they do not succeed, for example, a load test is always a good thing to check. If those systems are capable of handling the load of a Black Friday or the holiday season. That's what the scalability, and of course uptime. They have good SLAs if we're talking about services, because if they go down on Black Friday and it's an important system, it's your search service, and it goes down on Black Friday, well, good luck, sales are gonna plummet. And they need to be scalable, they need to be ready, they need to be up during those times. And of course, if Amazon goes down or Cloudflare, then you're just screwed, because half of the internet runs on them. But that usually doesn't happen too often, but it did happen twice over the past year, I think. Yeah, once Amazon, once Cloudflare, so that was fun. And again, composable architecture, it's not new. PWA Kit is new. It's a offering that's been added, but it's new to Commerce Cloud. It wasn't new before, so it's a solid product, and there's a solid team behind it that knows headless, that knows composable, that knows which features are important. But it's not something new. And what does the future look like? Now, every brand is talking about headless, at least in the B2C. I'm not sure about B2B, etc., but I think in B2B it's also becoming a little bit of a buzzword. Like, everyone's going headless. And I've talked to a few brands and say, when I ask a question, why do you want to go headless? And say, because everyone's doing it. That's not technically the correct answer that I was hoping for. But you need to be ready as a brand to go headless. Like I said, you have flexibility, but you also have the complexity to go with it. You need to have the people available to manage those systems that you choose as your composable architecture and as your headless. Because you're splitting up systems, you have multiple backends, you need people to manage those. And in general, the rule is you need more people with a headless solution than you need for a monolithic solution, but it depends really on the situation, how far you want to go. And it's hard to predict. Like, if you look at the past 3 years, where everything is going, maybe some new magical solution comes out in a year or so that is even better than what we have now. So it's going hard. If you look at NFTs, for example, now that's the buzzword, the metaverse. Where's that heading? I mean, we have some ideas. We have a lot of theoretical ideas, but putting them in practice is not the easiest. And so it's going all directions. So that makes all of this very hard to predict. Now, what does the competition say? If you look at headless, we have a few competitors. Salesforce is a dinosaur. And that's the biggest. Yeah, sorry. That's one of the sentences that we hear. Salesforce is a dinosaur. It's old, it's monolithic, it doesn't have API, it's not ready for headless. It's a monolithic, it's not API first, and it's expensive. Yeah. Nah, it's not. It is not. Salesforce grows, it stays up to date, you have releases, new features being added. If you look at social commerce, there's big stuff coming with integrations that others do not have. It is very flexible. It can scale with your organization, and you can choose. You can go monolithic, or you can go composable. It's up to you. That's a freedom that not all platforms can provide. It's ready for composable and headless, but it's also here to stay for companies that are not ready to make that move. You can go at your pace. If you already have a monolithic setup, and you say, okay, we're going to go first for a hybrid. We're going to, I think one of the examples that Salesforce gives is, okay, we're going to put a homepage, category page, PDP. We're going to put that headless. Checkout still on the monolithic system. We're going to redirect. We're going to put it on the same domain, but we're going to slowly move our side and make it more and more complex as we grow as well to support that complexity, which is an important thing. And that's not something that every platform can provide. Is for a lot with Headless, you have to go all in. You get your commerce engine, but you don't have your CMS, you don't have a loyalty, or you don't have other systems. But with Salesforce, it's all of the features are in there, and you can slowly move them out. You don't have to do it all, you don't have to go all in. You can go at your pace, which is, I think, is a very important thing for some organizations. Now, you have organizations that can go all in. Of course, larger organization, IT department, 300 people, big teams, just for marketing, 20 people, just for loyalty, 30 people, they're ready. They can go. They know that they need the people just for that specific item. But if you have 2 people in your IT team and maybe 3 people managing the website, yeah, then maybe you need to slowly grow up your team, expand together with your system. And then it makes sense to go slow or slower. And of course, Salesforce, it's best of breed. It provides all the functionalities. It's ready for anything, in my opinion. But we'll see where that goes. But like API first, all of the APIs, especially if you look at the CRM, the Force.com platform, everything, almost everything is exposed, so you can do whatever you want. On Commerce Cloud, most of the things have been available. I mean, mobile applications have been built on the Headless APIs for years already. So it's perfectly possible already for years to do Headless. And Mobify was, before the acquisition, was already providing Headless storefronts for Commerce Cloud. I've also seen a demo of Adobe Experience Manager in front of Commerce Cloud. So there's no reason to say that Salesforce is a dinosaur. It's capable of both. And that's basically where I wanted to end with. I think, yeah, 5 minutes left, so that's good timing, I think. Anyone have questions that they want to ask, or remarks, or don't agree with me? So let me know. I have a mic. I can put you on the spotlight. No? Nobody? No takers? No questions? Then I would like to thank you for... yeah, you have a question? Yeah, no, it's for the recording. So you can be on the recording if I... Ooh, that's dangerous to go in front.
Just want to ask about the difference between the Commerce Cloud. I'm talking about B2C with other products in the market. What's the difference and what is the unique point that B2C Commerce Cloud, Salesforce Commerce Cloud provides?
Yeah, so you mean comparing Salesforce B2C Commerce Cloud with things like Intershop or SAP Commerce Cloud? What's the biggest difference there?
Yes.
Now
other
the biggest
major markets.
Now, if you look at Salesforce B2C Commerce Cloud, the biggest thing that it has been is that it has been on the cloud. It's getting updated every month. If you look at my history, I come from Intershop, which was an on-premise, at least at a time, an on-premise solution where you had your version, did not get updated unless you did the update yourself. And also the features that are being added. So Salesforce really, with those updates, really forces you to stay up to date. They add new features like the social commerce that is now one of the focus together with Headless. It keeps you up to date with what's going on. It's flexible in its movements, which not all platforms can provide. Now we've seen that over the past years, a lot of providers have been moving to the cloud, seeing that it works, going from on-premise to the cloud, but yeah, they moved a bit later than Commerce Cloud. And it puts a lot of control in the business manager on the customer. You get more flexibility than you will get with other platforms, a bit more control over some technical things that usually requires deployments. And the way of development is drastically different than others, which is a positive thing and a negative thing. Maybe on one, it's a niche market to find developers for B2C Commerce Cloud. But I feel with with the PWA Kit, that's going to change. But I think the power really of the B2C Commerce Cloud platform comes with its flexibility and the monthly updates. A lot of exciting stuff happens there. I'll always look forward to reading the release logs of what's going to be added now. And that's not something I felt with, with my previous. And just the support for the enterprise, the auto-scaling, I mean, you don't have to worry about going down. Now, that fear has been going down with all the platforms, with the cloud solutions. But if we look at the projects that we did, which we took over, usually they went down on heavy load days. Black Friday, they just dropped out of the ether for a few hours just because of the load. Never happened with Commerce Cloud. I think we even had a DOS attack once, and it went slow. During that time, just never went down. So, yeah. Not sure if that answered. I can probably go on for a long time.
Can I have one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Can you share your experience with migrating from other systems to Salesforce Commerce Cloud? What is your experience on migrating those systems? I mean, how hard it was, and what's the time scale that you had? Was it how the customers felt when they're migrating from other systems to Salesforce Commerce Cloud?
Yeah, it really depends on what system they're coming from. Now, usually the migration process is quite straightforward. Now, one of the advantages of Salesforce Commerce Cloud is you either take the file format, but basically that's it. You take how Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and you have XML in B2C Commerce Cloud, and they need to provide a file. I'd never had too many issues, maybe some mapping, some readjustments, but I think I've seen projects go live in a few weeks. I think most cases 3 to 6 months is an average project time to go live after a migration. Because you start with a template, you don't have to start from scratch. On a lot of platforms you had to start from scratch, but you don't. You start from a template, and it makes it go a lot faster. Also, the processes that you have, there's also third-party plugins. Depending on where they're coming from, it's plug and play. Otherwise, you have to develop it yourself. I think the biggest thing usually is password migration. So that's usually the biggest challenge that we have is the password migration, because other systems don't want to give their encryption that we can emulate. But other than that, it's gone pretty smoothly, for me at least. But 3 to 6 months, and if you look at multi-cloud projects, then the time scaling goes up depending on how complex they want to do the use cases. If that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay. Anybody have other questions?
Yeah, I think one more question. You still have time for one question? Yeah.
Hello, I am just training until now, but when I heard about you talking about API and Black Friday, what I know, it's Salesforce make some limitation for the API for all the companies. So the company can expand this limitation in one day. Then
yeah, that's you mean the amount of API, the governance limits for B2B?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah? So there is a limit. That's a licensing package that you can buy more API calls. It's based on the amount of user licenses, the amount of API calls you can make in a day. So you can expand those, but there's a license package to solve that solution.
But we can expand it in one day, like Black Friday, and then
Yeah.
For one
talk
day.
to the account executives.
It became a soft limit.
Soft limit. Okay, perfect.
Don't quote me, I think it's now a soft limit.
Yeah. So it doesn't completely crash, but then afterwards they're gonna like with storage. Like you can go over the storage limit, and then next year Salesforce is gonna call you. If you've gone 4 times over, we're gonna have to up your licensing fee. So before it was a hard one. I think then it just completely your site would stop working.
I think in general you should have something in front of Salesforce and never talk directly to Salesforce.
Yeah.
Like
Like MuleSoft, for example, but don't buy MuleSoft. Yeah, time's up, sorry. But there are solutions for those. There's a ton of solutions to make sure that that's resolved. Yeah. So thank you, everyone.